Hi everyone. I know we are keeping you from lunch, but I can assure you this is going to be a really interesting conversation, especially if it follows our prep call. My name is Paul Gubbins. I work for a global CTV ad server called Publica, but enough about me. Welcome, panelists.
Hello, my name is Catherine Lofthouse. I'm client partner at dentsu.
Hey everyone, Ed Wale, VP Europe over at LG Ad Solutions.
And Martyn, Bentley, Commercial Director, Audience Project.
Excellent. Right, before we get into the weeds of the discussion, I would really love to better understand your personal interpretation of what TV content actually is in 2023. Martyn, I'm going to start with you.
Well, it's a bit of a moving target, I think, because people have their own interpretation.
Yep.
I think we've heard it today and yesterday, let the audience decide really what they call TV.
Mm-hmm.
From our perspective as a measurement company, we just want to be in a position where like is measured with like as much as possible, because that's where you get a kind of an outcome that can be useful to your business.
Yep, okay, cool. Ed?
I guess I observe like two kind of schools of thought on this. On the one hand, it's more content-led, so premium, professionally produced, long-form content. Doesn't matter the screen.
Okay.
Right? Like, think broadcaster content on mobile, for example, could be defined as TV. And another school of thought that's more perhaps device-led, right? Anything that happens on the big screen itself can be considered TV, and that is obviously becoming a more all-encompassing kind of environment. I personally lean more, I guess, towards the device view of the world. I think we probably shouldn't. We should try to remain as objective as possible, I'd say, as this thing kind of continues to evolve.
Okay, and Catherine?
I mean, if you asked someone from Gen Z, they might disagree with you there. So I think, look, it is a moving target.
What's Gen Z?
Yeah. It's a moving target, but it's about an experience with your content. So it's about having, a long-form piece of video content. It's having an experience that you really connect with, because I think if we distill the essence of TV, it's that value that it brings kind of over and above or incremental to, your social, your short clips. So, it's an experience, it's about the quality, and it's, I think, very, very, like you're saying, individual based. But I think that'll probably shift again in a few years, and maybe we'll even find some more definition as the space matures.
Okay, so if you look at view from the buy side, I think we spent the last 3 days at the Beat TV event and last 2 days now at this event talking about European TV viewing habits. And as we're all aware, television now is so much more than just broadcaster-led, owned and operated content. So if you're in an agency, you're dealing with some of the biggest advertisers in the world, how do they think about measuring TV audiences when viewers are potentially engaged and proactively leaning into the growing number of AVOD and fast services that are now available via the OEMs such as LG and Samsung? How do they think about that?
I mean, with a lot of trepidation, I think, but as an agency, it's our job to drive understanding through that very complicated landscape that is, of course, ever-changing. Look, I mean, a lot of the value that we can extract currently is derived from things like our setup and our choices, and drawing expectations, right? Obviously, a unified measurement across absolutely everything is a bit of a pipe dream right now, but there's a lot of possibility in between all of that. Yeah. That possibility is very dependent on the choices that we make, the journeys that we plan for throughout the year with our clients. So it's definitely possible to get a great level of understanding right now. Now, I mean, I don't want to say apples and apples and apples to pears, but that is really the landscape that we're playing in. So yeah, it's complex. There are a lot of opportunities. You've got to be really structured right now to make the most of it into next year and the year beyond, but also very flexible, knowing that there's going to be a lot of change that's coming.
And when you say it's difficult, the reason it's difficult is because broadcasters are measured via BARB. It works very, very well. That's been the de facto way that those on the buy side have historically measured TV for a number of years. But again, that growing number of AVOD and fast services don't yet support BARB. So is that why it's still quite complex to get that holistic view of what's happening behind all streaming services?
Yeah, I mean, you said don't yet support BARB, BARB brings great value, panels bring great value. But they're part of a wider picture that we're looking at, right? we've got great expectations, in the industry from our clients about the level of granularity and data and insights that we can get.
Yeah.
And that's born from that digital ecosystem that has, flourished with this kind of understanding. Barb almost sits at, a different point in the funnel, shall we say, and it's a different understanding. But it's about bringing value from people's experiences and people's sentiments that you can't get from data.
Yep.
So look, there is a scenario where we have both ends of this value input from, panel, Barb, whoever it is, the data converging in a seamless way that then brings us full holistic meaning and an ability to optimize and use that data in real time. So, it's complicated, right? We're not there yet, but there's value in both.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. And Martyn, I know you and I have discussed this topic at length, best practices when it comes to measuring audiences across the growing number of streaming services that they're leaning into. What's your school of thought of where we're currently at the moment, and how should agencies and their advertisers be thinking about that?
Yeah, so we work with agencies and brands a lot, and they're using the platform that we have to measure cross-media audience reach, frequency, and audience composition. And the ones that have the most success with it are the ones that come with a fairly clear hypothesis of what they want, why they want to measure something, because they know that they're spending this chunk of money to try and get this outcome, probably brand effect one way or another. And then they'll be experimenting normally from a point of, right, linear TV isn't getting me all the way, so where can I find an equivalent sort of audience in an equivalent-ish context? Yeah. To build that reach that I know drives the brand or even intent outcomes that the money is intended to produce. So they're not necessarily looking at every single channel that's there. They I think is it the lady from Disney was saying earlier on, I think it was Rita, scale is so important because at the end of the day, people are busy. You can't necessarily sort through every small thing. Yeah. So an aggregated level, they might attempt CTV and see what that adds on top of TV or something else like YouTube, and then start to work out the value equation between those different channels, reach, cost per reach, and so on. Okay. So it seems to be around experimentation initially, to kind of help move the planning along from where you could more or less rely on TV. Yeah. Okay. And Ed, what's your school of thought on the big question of the week, measurement?
I guess there's no all-encompassing, from what I can tell, there's no all-encompassing kind of industry solution. There are two potential options, but neither one of them cover all of the market, right? So that's, I think, created a gap. Yeah. And there are, innovative companies like AP, Audience Project, and equally, others in the market, and indeed also agencies coming up with their own proprietary tools to try to make sense of this, right? Yeah. I'm interested to kind of understand, in the agency world, how much are you talking about deduplicated reach and frequency, at the top of the planning stage, or are you more talking about outcomes, audiences, and then dealing with the problem of the media mix and where best to deploy?
Well, I think we've seen some fantastic presentations from different European broadcasters over the last several days, and the reoccurring theme is the fact that everybody's expecting all, if not the majority of TV content to be delivered via the household IP. Therefore, that kind of begs the question, should TV be measured via panels, because that's worked very, very well for a number of years in the broadcasting space, or should it, in theory, be measured via impression data because that TV content is being delivered to households in a digital way? Is it one versus the other, or is it kind of a hybrid of both approaches, Martyn?
It's not Brexit, Paul. Okay. We'll use hybrid models to take what signal is available from a particular channel. Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to I think it's going to be a mixture of stuff. Yeah. The impression level may be useful in some cases, but it also may just be a timestamp with and that you can't really deduce that much from that in terms of the audience. So definitely a mix. Okay.
It has to be both, right? I think, neither one of these solutions kind of completes the picture. Panels, I think, have in some cases, a granularity issue. We heard a couple of days ago, there are, members of the Barb panel that's seeing 70%. Yeah. Zero rated spots. That's a granularity issue. Yeah. Ad serve data is obviously very granular, but then we get into the topic of, you know, is every walled garden going to pool that ad server data and allow for a holistic measurement? You know, probably not, right, in the long term, just due to the barriers of commercial, privacy, technology, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I think we're already seeing examples of JICs, right, in markets, onboarding device level data to improve those measurements, and that's likely to continue.
Okay, so far it's a combination of both approaches, right?
Definitely, but you've got to have a panel in there as well, because there has to be ground truth for the sort of extrapolation and the deductions or the calculations around the probabilistic reach have to be based on some level of ground truth, which is the panel.
Okay, and again, if we make a sweeping assumption that more and more television inventory globally will be transacted, bought and sold in a programmatic way, does that make it easier or harder for those on the buy side to actually quantify audience, measure audience? How are brands thinking about that?
I mean, look, I don't want to get too detailed or technical here, but I think...
Let's do it.
Let's get into the weeds.
If we're ready.
No.
I mean, look, I think one of the big topics that's come out of these past 2 days is really like, where is the value of the bidder in all of this, right? Because if we, look at what we can buy programmatically now, we've got some great options, and it really allows points of centrality in what we're doing to get some kind of standardization in our measurement and get some kind of control over things like frequency. So how do we look at it? Well, really positively, if we look at it from this angle, that doesn't cut us off from having, add-ons like panels, like getting that sentimentality that you're not going to ever find from an ad server, right? It's not how we prove that kind of value. So, I mean, positively, but there are obviously, walled gardens, some instances, even in digital where we're still buying across, different kinds of spaces. So I think we just need to be really mindful about how we speak when we say programmatically, because the question of walled gardens, it still poses its own challenges, particularly when we're thinking about frequency, particularly when we're thinking about efficiency for our clients.
Yeah,
so,
fair enough.
I mean, it's a real mixed bag, but I think the main point is that there is an opportunity and a solution in play today, and it's very dependent on kind of the structures that we put in place to facilitate that success.
And Ed, obviously, LG speaks to all of the big holding codes globally. Many of the agencies, as Catherine's illustrated, are on that journey to try and figure out the best way to plan TV audiences and then to transact against them. How do you meet some of the needs of the agencies when they're speaking to your teams about measuring the success of their campaigns, for instance?
Well, obviously, as the OEM, what we're observing is, and we kind of looked at the data on this, there's increasingly more viewing is happening natively on the screen, right, on the smart TV device. We looked at devices 5 years ago versus last year in terms of how much viewing happens via an HDMI, and there's a pronounced downward trend, right, in every single European market, which just, it makes sense, right, intuitively. The experience has got better on the smart TV. It's one device, all the apps are available there, right? So I think that the OEMs have a role to play in this. And there's an interesting path for us in terms of how can we be part of that panel-based measurement, right, and supercharge those panels with granular device-level data. Right now, we offer measurement, obviously, to our customers, but particularly what we're focused on is an activation tool. So much of this conversation is about measurement after the fact. Did not reach this, and so on and so forth. Leveraging our data, we can apply audiences, at runtime to say, this TV has not seen this particular ad, or this TV was not in this particular app, right? And therefore, those are the tactics we're deploying to get better results ultimately, from these measurement solutions. But it's absolutely a journey, and we'll see, I guess, where it continues to evolve to.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. And then, Martyn, does it really matter to, Audience Project, one of the leading measurement companies in the space at the moment, does it matter if a campaign's transacted in a programmatic way versus a direct kind of automated guaranteed way when you're looking at it from a measurement point of view?
Well, there's a sort of consideration around implementing the measurement, but largely not, because that's not what we're here to kind of advise on, and these are just ways of paying for something, really, or organising something. No, it's much more important to understand the deduplication across those channels.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, I think there's a fair amount of opportunity to accidentally buy the same thing twice or be in the same environment through something that could be audience extension on a broadcaster's YouTube, but also maybe buying some other YouTube stuff as an example. So, you know, you want to avoid that. So hopefully I'm kind of going off piste here a bit, but you know, if the silos don't want to exist between these different buying teams, hopefully. Yep. We know they still do in certain businesses, but it's just, it's a means to an end from our point of view.
I'm not sure it's programmatic is the delineation, right? It's ad-served media from linear to streaming, right? That would be the major, I think, delineation. I guess the irony is that there's been a sort of simple view of the world in linear with a shared single source of truth. And this one-to-one delivery mechanism of ad-served media gives us that capability to get really granular. But now we have the challenge of walled gardens. So it's kind of ironic that you know what the platforms that could deliver us superior measurement maybe actually are making it more complex.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And
I want to jump in on that point because we've kind of ended that conversation at measurement, right? But what about optimization? It's like the next step that we naturally want to take, because if we're measuring it, why? Well, we want an insight, we want a learning from that, and we want to be able to reintegrate that into what we're doing. So just a point about like the standardization and unification, if we're actually saying to ourselves, you want to measure to learn, to implement, to solve for a challenge in real time, then just bringing it back to, you know, bidder, whether it is within a walled garden or, you know, holistically across a number of sources, you know, if we can get that feedback mechanism in, then it allows us to take that next step, which is, you know, the value of biddable. So, to take that next step, I mean, my personal point of view would be, you know, it's important wherever that bidder sits. The value is not just for measurement, but for articulation and implementation over and above that as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Ed, we're talking about the types of data that can be used to help inform the measurement process. What role do you think the OEMs, the TV manufacturers, might be able to play in helping to bring more transparency, interoperability to the TV measurement component in the future?
I guess it's sort of similar to what we were talking about a little earlier, right? Device level data. We have 6.5 million TVs in the UK. We can measure what content is being watched, what apps are being used, you know, what ads have been exposed to which TV devices, right? It's like creating a high definition picture of that market where you actually have an understanding of what's happening on each and every pixel, right? Rather than taking a you know, a seed, which they're very sophisticated and statistically accurate, right? But it's a projection at the end of the day, right? So I think that's what OEMs can bring to the table, is to offer, you know, that high definition to the measurement as well. But it's not the only, it's not the answer to everything, right? And you know,
it's an ingredient in a mix, in theory, right? Okay. And Martyn, you were talking earlier, right, about content distribution, trying to figure out where streaming services are kind of distributing their content. Do you go directly? Do you go to the distributor? Catherine, I know you and I were discussing this backstage, but again, through the optics of the buy side, how important is it today to say, right, I need to get as close to the source of content as possible and buy from them directly, or you're happy to buy from a platform that may be distributing their content, so long as that platform's got the eyeballs and engagement of the audiences that your advertisers are trying to target? Maybe a question for you as well, Ed. Both of you.
Who wants
to go first?
Go ahead.
Go on. We're here to provide value for our clients. It doesn't matter how we do that, right? Whether it is, you know, direct or, you know, I think those things are still being ironed out, though. You know, what is available, how, you know, are there any points of differentiation? I mean, particularly when we talk about, you know, data, which is, you know, really bringing us to the core of value, whether it is through targeting or measurement or optimization, you know, that's where we get a little bit stuck at the minute. And those they've got very good reasons for that. Is it insurmountable in the long run? No. Do we need more unification? Yes, clearly. So I think the answer is a lot more predicated on like what expectations are, you know, and what expectations we set for why we're doing certain kinds of, you know, integrations or certain kinds of buy types. So, I mean, it's just so dependent on the needs of the circumstance. But, I mean, it doesn't matter at the end of the day for now, because we don't have a clear path through. It's about engaging, understanding value, knowing what priorities are, and then working forward to those things, as opposed to back from constraints or anything.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Because in a digital world, I think for a number of years, there's been that real appetite from the buyer side to get as close to the publisher as possible. You know, there's been supply path optimization, other practices agencies have used to optimize their planning and buying of digital. But with CTV and streaming, we're seeing that a lot of content is being syndicated, a lot of it is being distributed via different platforms. So it can make it quite difficult, if that is the practice that you're trying to employ on the buy side, to go direct to source, when that's not always the best route for your advertisers. Ed, what's your school of thought on that particular topic?
I think what we're talking about here is like YouTube, right? And
I guess they're the biggest distributor of people's content at the moment.
Yeah, and we're seeing premium publishers start to put their own kind of long form content onto YouTube.
Yeah.
So that potentially creates a bit of a challenge when you're working with the platform. Or do you work with the platform, or do you go directly to the content owner? Right.
Yeah.
That's I guess the piece. There's, I suppose, benefits to going direct to a particular publisher that really knows and understands their content. Perhaps it might be a very tailored activation for a particular brand and set of objectives. But equally, that's not going to work for everyone as well, right? And the platform itself offers huge scale.
Yeah.
So both approaches have merit.
Yeah, fair enough. And then I guess, Martyn, from a measurement point of view, I guess it could matter to those on the buy side, because some environments might share more data, others might share less. So there could be a preference, I guess, from an advertiser to work with one distribution partner versus another, maybe, for instance.
Yeah, but realistically, you can't buy some of the big platforms together. You just got to go and do that separately. And actually, what we're seeing is, if you like, a Venn diagram that was split out, you could just take a report from 1, 2, and 3, but now you can bring that together and look at the overlap and then start to work out what the relative value of those buys are. And it's quite, there was a point earlier on about optimization. I think it's very hard to measure and optimize in real time, because at the end of the day, people just haven't got time. There aren't enough people to just pore over this massive data. But we work with some customers who just do the summer and then the winter campaign. They analyze, they look at the quite simple numbers, really, in terms of which channel's providing the best cost per reach. And as long as they're comparable, there's a massive difference that can be made on the next campaign next year. That could be a 10% saving on a 30 million budget or something like that. These are big numbers. So we have seen cases now where AI is coming in to sort of like auto-optimize along the way on certain platforms, and things get quite interesting with that in terms of trying to keep track of it. But I don't see a case for really immediate real-time optimization.
Okay, fair enough. And then, I guess going into next year, the types of advertisers that are coming into television, I think we've heard some fantastic, again, presentations over the last several days from big broadcasters saying that they're seeing net new advertisers into their environment because they're making their inventory more addressable, more discoverable within programmatic platforms. Do we think there will be a healthy mix of performance advertisers now leaning into streaming, maybe, Catherine, because the barrier to entry has been removed? They don't have to commit massive budgets up front. They can dip in and out of different DSPs.
I mean, I think we come back to measurement, don't we? And I think we've got a little bit of a different POV on the optimization, but performance requires that, and whether it is via a machine learning, a custom algorithm, but then we come back to measurement, and we come back to data, and we come back to building some foundations that are really robust enough. Yes, within individual walled gardens, we've got opportunities. I mean, I don't want to name names, but Amazon Prime, look at that. You've got your ROAS, driver, you've got a bidder, you've got the optimization, you've got a lot of opportunity there, and it's end to end. Yes, but if we're talking about performance, how do you measure performance? We obviously have some spaces where that is much more viable to really connect, a D2C landscape from TV to an outcome, and in those spaces, yes, very much so. But there's a whole world out there. There's a tapestry of inventory, and it's not, as we know, the same situation. And you can't be as reactive. So I think it comes again down to sort of making sure the expectations are set, knowing what value is up front, so that you can spend that budget meaningfully and effectively.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But again, it all comes back down to measurement.
It
You're not
absolutely
going to
does.
scale performance unless you can quantify it's actually working, right?
And yeah,
I
particularly
mean, in
with
the
performance.
context of like deduplicated reach and frequency, how relevant is that topic to performance media, right? I thought performance is about performance.
No,
Is it driving
it's very
sales?
important.
Is it?
It's
It's an
really
output,
important.
yeah.
It's a mixture because, you know, we've seen it actually, I think, with what Nexus was presenting earlier on. It's a mixture of reach and effect that is what is working for those types of companies. I love the new to TV stuff because I spent a long time working in TV, and that's where the TV companies really can make incremental money. Mm-hmm. And it's great for the businesses because it totally works. But you have to look at the reach because you don't want to be paying the wrong amount because that can just completely ruin the plan for the reach. But at the same time, does it work to drive an effect, which may not be instant sales, but it should be interest. And some sort of action being taken. And we do quite a lot of work with those kind of companies to help them prove, wow, this TV-like or actual TV experience is just driving businesses. And then you can fine-tune it over time with understanding the cost per reach or relative cost per reach, and then also continually monitoring the effects and how that's changing.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I guess more efficient reach and frequency is naturally going to drive better performance. I guess my thought was, what's the primary metric? What are you measuring success against? Is it driving sales, or have I effectively,
We're into the funnel though, aren't we there, I
frequency?
suppose, where we look at those, more panel-based, maybe more traditional, survey-based structures that, support to inform all of that. Whereas if we go back to performance, we're going down the funnel, and they both have value, and, it's about how we interconnect them and, again, set expectations for what we want to know so that we can plan meaningfully and understand what we're doing here, because there's different spaces for it.
You're right, and I think that's why everyone's so excited, because CTV or streaming or internet delivered TV is really democratizing TV advertising for so many brands, and it will bring net new budgets into television over the next several years. Before we close out, I can't have a CTV panel without discussing artificial intelligence. High level, is it going to be meaningful to many people in this room over the next several years from a measurement point of view? Martyn?
Oh man, so I got some briefing points off some of our people, and so
what was the high level?
Well, we know that, and lots of people have sort of tried to address this subject, but it is being used already, right? In terms of certainly in our case, we're using deep learning as a subset.
Yep.
The kind of chat, what's it called, generative AI? That we as consumers know, Chat GPT is not massively useful for mathematical calculations as it stands. I think that's about to change. So it's already being used. I don't think it will change that much other than just be used more, because the signal that is and the complex pattern recognition that needs to be done is going to get more complex as there is certain obfuscation of things, or certain big channels might say, I'm not sharing that anymore, and so, but the buyers still want to understand what's happening, so you just have to keep using it to get the outcomes.
Fair enough. Ed?
I think the more practical, perhaps like earlier stage, near-term activations, maybe it will be more on the creative side, right? We hear a lot about dynamic creative, we hear about one-to-one addressability. I think AI could be deployed to really maximize that opportunity to serve, the right tailored creative to the right, device.
Yeah, fair enough. Catherine?
So, custom algorithms a few years ago, right? It's more machine learning. The way that I see AI is an expansion of the machine learning, almost similar to what we've just been saying here, to open the door to lots of other opportunities for pattern recognition, for automation, to put back into systems, and make recommendations and things like that. And just basically pull out the value, in a complex landscape does require a lot of, powerful and heavy lifting. So. I would happen to agree. I think, we've already got quite a lot of use cases in the industry. I think those use cases are being opened up by new opportunities, and I think making sure that we can maximize those in a meaningful way, in the vast subset of ways they can be used, is, only going to be something that helps us, but we have to understand why, we have to understand the value, and we have to put ourselves directionally into that, knowing where we're going and why we're doing it.
Okay, and I think that is great advice. Martyn, one or two words that will describe the addressable TV ecosystem next year.
Moving target.
Okay. Fair, I think. Ed?
I think we should all remain positive, all right? I mean, there's a lot of talk about how difficult it is and how complex it is, but we're moving forwards. And so stay posy, I'll go with that.
Nice, I like that, okay.
Yeah, opportunity.
Nice. Opportunity,
plan for it, be ready for it, be flexible about it, but opportunity. I think someone said yesterday, we're at the start, we're at the beginning, and, with that comes a great playing field for us all in the industry to lean in and make it the best that it can possibly be.
I agree, and mine would be interoperability. I think we're going to see a lot more collaboration next year from those on both the buy and sell sides to try and get to that utopia that we need to give agencies and brands the ability to measure holistically across all screens, regardless of the streaming service that they're engaged with. With that, thank you very much for joining us, and please go and enjoy your lunch. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you.
Cheers.